Hello and welcome to another episode of Words with Myself. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. I'm sure almost everyone has heard that phrase by now. But what is the true meaning behind that? What can we actually take from that as usable, tangible advice? Well, I want to start off by just kind of looking at whether we think this is true or not. I mean, I can think of a couple of examples just off the top of my head that would suggest that this isn't true in its entirety, but one of my great learnings from the Hermetic principles is that nothing is 100% true. So when we look at something, there's no point in really analysing whether it's 100% accurate in all cases, because nothing is 100% accurate in all cases and all possibilities. It's very easy for me to kind of straw man my own argument and say, well, what about the death of someone's children? This is arguably someone's greatest fear, yet nothing that they want is on the other side of that. But this is why we shouldn't use absolutes like everything, because it will never be always or everything, because you can have a huge correlation of data and see that all of the data is pointing in a specific direction. And then you have one anomaly. And because you used an absolute, like always is now false because it's not always that way. But the statement is true within a confined context. Instead of talking about your deepest, darkest fears and the worst case scenario, instead we scope it down to things that we want, but we are scared to do the work in order to get it. So it might be that you want to be a public figure, but you can't get over your fear of public speaking. This is the kind of scenario that statement specifically tries to address, is that when we have a blocking fear, something that is stopping us from doing something that we know will be good for us or gets us to somewhere we want to go. And within this context, it's absolutely true. There are so many things that we stop ourselves from doing through those blocking fears. This could be a fear that we're not good enough. It could also be a fear that people will judge us, or maybe even fear that it won't meet our expectations. But whatever the reason, whether it's logical or not, rational or irrational, it is preventing us from taking action that we want to take. Now, the problem with these fears is they are always the same fear. They may have different layers to it, but it is always fear of the unknown. Fear that things will not go as we want them to go. Or we may not even want them to go a certain way, but we definitely don't want it to go to a certain way that is possible. But the problem with this is that the unknown is far too vast for us to really comprehend. When we talk about what is possible in the unknown is everything, and therefore the logic that you need to talk yourself out of doing something. Any time that you're looking at worst case scenarios, you can always come up with a worst case scenario almost. You could say, get up there, go do your speech. What are you worried about? What's the worst thing that can happen? And for anyone that actually thinks about this, it would be like, okay, I go up there, I get so nervous that I end up not getting my words out. I get humiliated. And then on my way back off the stage in shame, I have a heart attack and die right there and then. And you can always come up with these irrational, silly, hypothetical scenarios that could happen. There's always something you can pluck, like, oh, a meteor might come down from space and hit me in the head. It's not outside of the realm of possibility, therefore it is something that could be used as validation for your fear. Part of my job is risk analysis, and the one thing you learn when you're doing risk analysis is that there is nothing really that is outside of risk. Everything is risk. No matter what you do, no matter how safe you think something is, there is always the possibility that it can go wrong. And any intelligent risk analyst is going to consider all of those possibilities and those worst case scenarios so that you can be prepared for it. But part of that process is to understand the risk and not let it impede the function of the business. Because if the business is not willing to accept certain risks, the business is not going to grow. The business needs to invest capital in itself. Therefore, there is a risk that that money could be lost or misspent, or if you use that money, you might need it for something more important later. There is never an end to the things that can happen. And therefore, every single thing, every action, every belonging, everything has some kind of risk. It all carries risk. But there is also a greater risk. There is the risk of non-action. And if that business doesn't invest the money, then it won't grow, then it won't be sustainable, then it might collapse, then it might not make enough money. There has to be a point where you assess the situation and you say, okay, these are the things that could go wrong, but what could go right? And this is when we go back to the statement of everything that you want is on the other side of fear. You can also say there is nothing that you want that doesn't carry risk. Everything has a risk. And the actions that you take in life are because you think that the reward is worth the risk. You have calculated it and you have thought, I want this, and I know that I am risking time, effort, money, whatever it is to get it, but getting it is so important to me that I am willing to accept those risks. And the best way to start getting rid of these fears of things that we want or things that we want to do but are afraid to do is to ask ourselves, what is the consequence? What is the risk of us not doing this? Will I go my entire life wishing that I did this and always thinking about, I should have done that? Because to live your life in misery, not doing the things that you want to do and feeling like you never got past those hurdles and being disappointed in yourself, that to me is a much worse risk than me doing something and going, actually, this isn't for me. Or even if I do really bad, at least I tried. At least I gave it a go. So you can begin to balance the risk. You can begin to see, okay, there are consequences if I do this, but there are also consequences if I don't do this. And when it is something that is very important to us, and we often experience this with the things that are most important to us, the things that we truly dream about, our biggest dreams, our biggest goals, our greatest ambitions. These are the things that those blocking fears most come into play. And yet they're also the things that carry the largest risk for not pushing through. We're so focused on what will happen if we do it and it goes wrong that we are completely missing the point of what if we do it and it goes right? Or what if we don't do it at all? Like, what is the consequence of not doing it all, of not trying, of never knowing, of regretting? Because to me, a life of regret, a life of always wondering whether I should have done this or why did I wait so long, that is far worse to me as a risk, as a consequence, than me giving it a go and it going wrong or it going badly. And it's up to you to accept that risk. It's up to you to decide whether that is something, whether the consequence of not doing it is bad enough to outweigh the consequence of doing it. But if you're going to spend that time in your head constantly thinking about what if I do this and it goes wrong, or what if I don't do this, what if people aren't happy with me, or my family don't respect my decision, or nobody likes me anymore, what if? Well, there's also a whole other side of that. There's also, what if it all goes right for me? What if I have the best experience ever? What if everything finally works out for me? What if me doing this thing is the very thing I've been looking for my entire life? That thing that I've been looking to connect to. What if this is that thing? And we are preventing ourselves from getting that thing that we've always wanted, from connecting with that part of ourselves that has been desperately crying out to connect with. When we have these dreams, when we have these feelings, when we have this idea of our little version of happiness, it isn't nothing. It's not for no reason. It's because we feel so connected with that part of ourselves. It feels like it's already ours, and it feels like an injustice that it isn't ours already. But in order for it to be yours, you also have to do the work. You have to go through the experience, and those uncomfortable times, those doubts, those fears, they are all part of that experience. They are not separate from the experience. So in order for you to have that great time, that, in order to be the success, or in order to get everything that you want, there's also that process of making it worthwhile. If you just got what you wanted and it didn't require any effort or any sacrifice, then what would it really be worth? Why would it be meaningful to you? The sacrifice, the risk, the chance of it going completely wrong, the graft, the terrible times justify why things mean so much to us is because of that process, because of we know what it took to get. We know how much we wanted it. We know how hard we worked for it. That is what makes all of the best things in life worthwhile. So we're scared of the thing that actually gives the thing its value. We're scared of the consequences and what if things go wrong and what if I'm not good enough. But all of that is what makes getting what you want worthwhile. So to avoid it and to let that rule your decision and put you off almost seems ludicrous in hindsight. The reason why gold is so valuable now is that you can't just dig in the ground and find it. There has to be work and process and method, and you have to seek it out and find it. It's not just something that's readily available, and that's what makes it worthwhile. It's what gives it its value. And you can say the same for anything you want in life. The reason that you want it is because you don't currently have it. And if it was easy to obtain, if it was easy to have, you probably wouldn't be that fussed about having it. You're not that fussed about wanting and dreaming about having oxygen, even though it's absolutely vital for you to live. It's not something that you dream about, but it's readily available and it's always here, so we take it for granted. But we can't apply that same principle with the things that we want and our dreams and our goals. We need to appreciate that the work that goes into them, the struggle, the pursuit, the learning journey, all of that, that is exactly what makes it worthwhile. Thank you for listening.